Good morning, everybody. It's Colin, and it's time for our image review for October. So I did ask people to send in some images, and Kristen sent this one to me. So thanks, Kristen, for sending this one in and giving me a selection to choose from. Appreciate it. And this is something I'd like to do in the future: is just ask our online photo club members for images. So each month, be ready to send something in, and it could be something you've shot recently or something you've shot a while ago. It doesn't matter. Of course, I'd like you to go out and take pictures. It's kind of the point, isn't it? To go out and learn from our past experiences. Anyway, get out, take some pictures, and at the beginning of next month, I'll be asking you to send some in again, so we can take a look at perhaps making some improvements to the images that we're taking. So this one, of course, a young boy, and what strikes me when I look at this image is, he's got this probably a cheeky little grin on underneath the towel, but his image, his face is kind of lost there amongst the towel, and we have these bright areas in the picture as well. So one of the things that our eye is always drawn to in an image are the lightest areas of the image. So while we might be wanting to get people to focus on his eyes when they're looking at the picture, what's actually happening is our eyes are also being drawn to these areas of brightness. Okay, so if this is to be our focal point, the area that we want people to actually look at, we need to make some adjustments to this image and give it a little bit more impact. So let me just get rid of these scribblings, and we'll see what we can do here with giving us a little bit better of an option to pull people's attention to the eyes of this young child. Okay, so let me just see here. Now, this particular program I'm using is just the Windows program that came with my laptop, so it's nothing fancy, it's nothing special. So if you don't have Lightroom or Photoshop or Picasso or one of the standard image editing pieces of software, then usually your computer is going to come with something you can make changes, and that's all I'm using today. So I'm going to click the edit button up here in the top right menu, and we're going to go in and edit this picture. So I really don't have too many options here with this particular software, but it gives me enough to play with to make some changes. So the first thing I'm going to do is crop this image. Okay, so like I said, what I'm really going to try and do with this image is get us to have more attention on the boy's face, and to do that I'm going to crop it very tightly because I want to get rid of some of these areas that we can see that are pulling our attention away from him right now. I also don't like the fact that we get this little line of towel down here, so I'm going to zoom and crop in a little bit more, and then I'm going to move the image around until I get it to a place where I like it. And you see where I've got him right now, where his eyes are on that line of thirds, the top line of thirds. That's kind of where I like his eyes to be because it pulls aesthetic into the image. Now by doing that, I add a little bit more at the bottom of the picture, so I'm going to just take out that little bit of edging that we see on the towel there. And already by cutting out a lot of the background above his head, to the left and right of his head, and the towel at the bottom, we make this image a lot more compact, but we really now have nowhere else to look other than his eyes. So one of the other things that strikes me, and let me just click done here to say I'm done with the cropping aspect of this. So the other thing that strikes me is that this picture is a little bit bright, and that came about because our camera is set up to average a scene as far as the meter reading is concerned, for most cameras anyway, depending on what you've set your meter readings to, which type of metering you're doing. So it took all the dark places in the image, it took all the bright places in the image, and it came out with something in the middle. We've heard about this, hopefully, the 18% gray, the average gray. So the boy's face is a little bit overexposed for my liking, so I'm going to click on the adjust button up here, and we can actually darken this image a little bit. Before I do that though, I see something else here that I can apply to this image, and that's the vignette. So I'm going to add some vignetting, because what that will do is darken around the corners and the edges of the image. Now remember when I said that the brighter part of the images is where our eye tends to go, so I'm still left with, in the top left and the top right hand corners, some brighter parts of the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a vignette to actually darken those down. So I'm going to just slide this slider until I get to a place where I actually like a little bit of a darkened image there. So already we can see it darkens the boy's face a little bit too. I'm going to darken it a little bit more, but just a shade, using this light slider. And I think about where I want to be, and it never hurts to add a little bit of clarity to the image too. What the clarity does is it sharpens the edges in mid-tone colors. So it's almost, it gives it a little bit of a sharpening effect. It's not really what it's doing, but it adds a little bit of contrast to the edges of mid-tone colors. And we're already looking a little bit better, I think, on this image. So, you know, when I'm looking at this image now, I've taken out the the really light areas in the upper left and upper right corners, and they're almost kind of an 18% gray now, actually. So my eye is less drawn to those areas, still a little bit. But now when you look at this image, where you're really looking at is this boy's eyes, which I think was the intent at the beginning. And of course I've put his eyes off center to give us a little bit more aesthetic appeal to the image too, using the rule of thirds. So I have his eyes just about on the top horizontal third line, okay, with the bridge of his nose being round about the vertical third on the right hand side as well. So aesthetically more appealing, exposure wise a little bit better, but impactful. What I'm hoping you're seeing is that it's a lot more impactful of an image now that we've cropped it and adjusted for the brightness. So one of the things to think about when you're taking this kind of image is, you know, what is your camera telling you? Is it telling you the right thing or a close thing? Because of course the exposure was off a little bit on this image, and you'll always remember me saying that I underexpose my images by about a stop when I take them, and especially when you have this kind of differentiation, the dynamic range of the image being really bright in one part and fairly dark in another, the camera is going to come out with a suggested exposure that's going to be off a little. So don't be afraid to underexpose. And like I said, I usually keep my camera set at about one stop under what the meter is telling me for that reason. Okay, and then don't be afraid to crop. Remember the rule of thirds, and set your focusing system. If you can move the point of focus within the viewfinder to different parts of your viewfinder on most cameras. So don't be afraid to learn how to use that too. I'm very active when I'm taking photographs to move my point of focus around my viewfinder. So I actually set up my camera so that I cannot do anything but focus on my image of my subject within the rule of thirds. I set my focus point to a point which is around about you know, a third from the left or a third from the right and a third from the top or a third from the bottom. And that's just how I focus my camera. So if there's one thing to learn, two things to learn. First of all, don't trust your meter. Second thing, don't be afraid to move your autofocus point of focus around in your viewfinder to help you get better composition. And of course, finally, if all else fails, come and edit in some kind of system, some kind of software in which you can do that. Okay, so I'm just going to click the Save a Copy button here so we can have a look at the before and after. So of course this was the after. We'll click the back button and see the before. So where we started from and where we ended up. Okay, so hopefully you can see there. A lot more impactful when we're done with the picture than where we started from. And of course, not to detract from Kristen's photography. Good job, Kristen. And you know, just a little bit more practice in that rule of composition and adjusting exposure, and you're getting there, all right? So thanks again. That's it for me for now. I will speak to you next time.